Welcome back, everyone, to Movies and TV Shows on the Ball. Welcome to part 2 of Discussing DC, where I look at DC stuff and talk about it. Last time in the episode we discussed Smallville. Jay and I covered Smallville, and today I'm looking at the first episode of which is part of the Arrowverse that Smallville isn't connected to, but sort of. When Smallville ended in 2011, Arrow kind of took that mantle in 2012 and did kind of the, multi-universe or multi-show kind of crossover stuff. If you remember in Arrow, if you've seen season 6 of Arrow, and this is one of the reasons why I'm looking at the pilot. Smallville in season 6 of, not Arrow, but season 6 of Smallville, Oliver Queen, who is played by Justin Hartley, who was originally Aquaman in the pilot that never went anywhere. He does not show up till season 6 in that show. I'm looking at the pilot episode of Arrow, which is the start of the Arrowverse. So Arrow was from 2012 to 2020, which lasted about 8 years or 8 seasons. It starred Stephen Amelia, who plays Oliver Queen. He was in, you may know him from such films as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Out of the Shadows. He played Casey Jones. He was in Hills, which was about wrestling. He was in Flashpoint and The Cutting Edge, Fire and Ice. His other works include recently he's been in Calamity Jane. He played Wild Bill, and he was in the Arrow and Vixen, which was an animated show. But he's been pretty much used since Arrow came out as for any Green Arrow sort of or Arrow crossover event. I would like to see him in the DC. I don't know if we'll see him in the DCU verse or not, or if they'll keep that separate. But he plays Oliver Queen, and in this one, Oliver Queen is pretty much. I kind of get that he kind of plays the playboy Bruce Wayne kind of feel to him, but I'll get into that once I get through the episodes. Then you have Katie Cassidy. Katie Cassidy, who is actually the daughter of David Cassidy, who was in the Partridge Family. She was in, her films include A Nightmare on Elm Street, the 2010 remake. She was in Click. She played the older daughter in the future of Adam Sandler. She was in Black Christmas. She was in Taken. She played Amanda, who got taken first at the beginning of Taken. She was also in episodes of Seventh Heaven and the Cancel Too Soon series Listen Up. She played Laurel Lance, who is a kind of the ex-girlfriend of Oliver Queen. Is what we kind of get at. Then you had David Ramsey. David Ramsey was in Pay It Forward. He was in episodes of Draft Day, or the movie Draft Day. He was in episodes of Dexter, The West Wing, episodes of Charmed, CSI Miami. He shows up again in The Flash, and Supergirl as John Duggar. He plays Diggle, not John Duggar, but John Diggle. And he is he starts out as the bodyguard for Stephen Amelia, Oliver Queen, and kind of becomes his partner. Then you had Emily Brett Rickards. She was in Calamity Jane, Romeo Killer, or Romeo, Killer Autumn, and the Black Jaguar, or Killer Autumn and the Black Jaguar. She was in episodes of The Flash and Supergirl. She plays Felicity Smooch. She's not really showed up in the pilot episode, but she shows up in episode 2. But these are just kind of the top casts from IMDb. Then you have Willow Horde. No. You have Paul Blackthorne, who was in CSI Miami, episodes of Monk, episodes of Lipstick Jungle, episodes of Deadwood, ER, and 24. He played Quentin Lance, who is the father of Laurel Lance, who is a detective. Then you have Willow Holland, who you know from Straw Dogs, Legion, Gossip Girls. She played the older version of Marissa Cooper's Marissa Cooper's sister in the OC as Caitlin Cooper, but she doesn't show up till season 3 or 4. In that show, she plays Thea Queen, who is Oliver Queen's sister. Then you have Susan Thompson, who you know from Star Trek Voyager as Borg Queen, Star Trek Next Generation as Borg Queen, the canceled too soon series Kings with Ian McShane from John Wick and Pirates of the Caribbean 4. CSI and Law and Order SVU, LA Law and Little Giants. She plays Maura Queen, who is Oliver Queen's mother. Then you have Colin Salmon. He was in Resident Evil, Alien vs. Predator, Punisher Warzone, London Has Fallen. He plays Walter Steele, who is Maura Queen's new husband in the at the beginning of the episode. Then you have Hiro Kawaganga, who was in Smallville, The X-Files, Godzilla, Almost Human, and Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Then you have the pilot, who was directed by David Nutter, who directed 8 episodes of Smallville, The Sopranos, ER, episodes of Dark Angel, and the TV show 21 Jump Street with Johnny Depp. So the pilot pretty much opens kind of with a man in a green hood known as Oliver Queen, and we kind of see him. He kind of got the beard and he's got the green hood, and he's been on an island, and we see that he's been on an island, and he's been on an island for, it looks like he's been on an island for years, and he's trying to get the attention of fishermen. We hear a voiceover about how he survived the ordeal. So a lot of this show goes from flashback to flashback, or flashback to present to flashback, and then sort of like how he kind of gets rescued by the fishermen, and then we kind of get sort of the backstory about how Oliver Queen was a rich socialite and that had run in with the police, and with not the police, but the paparazzi, and how his father died on board the ship. And we kind of see him sort of, he parties. We see him party a lot. We see him out in kind of out and about, and kind of giving the paparazzi a run for their money, giving them, being sort of, kind of childish and everything. And then so that gives us a backstory of kind of where he's kind of come from before him being shipwrecked and on the island. And then we go back to the present, and we're kind of introduced, uh, and then kind of how his father died. And then we go back into the present where Oliver is now in a hospital staring out a window, and his mother, Mora Queen, is talking to the doctors about his medical conditions, and she's like saying, how long is the amnesia gonna last, and what should I do about Oliver now that he is been been shipwrecked, kind of getting back to society, and um, and kind of that sort of shows us that Oliver is trying to get sort of kind of he's trying to come back to a normal life in the hospital. And then we are then introduced to Laura Lynch, and she is a legal aide for the DA office, and she kind of reminds me of the kind of the Katie Holmes character in Batman Begins a little bit, how she works for the DA office. She goes to her desk to hear Owen's conspiracy, or as we like to call it back in the Smallville episode, Wall of Weird, about Starling City businessman. She then brings her action to a news. She brings her attention to a newscast about Oliver Queen, and kind of how he's coming back. How kind of his newscast about Oliver Queen and Oliver's return. Oliver is spending his first night back in his room, and he's staring out the window, and we kind of get a and he's kind of staring at the window, and this is kind of his first day back with society, and he's just not kind of used to it now. I mean, they say that he's been shipwrecked for about 3 years, or 5 years, I think, somewhere between there. I didn't write it down in my notes. Then Queen's Gambit, or spending his first night in society. And then we kind of flashback where Oliver is with his dad on the Queen's Gambit, which is his ship. He has been hanging out with a girl, and we kind of see that he's still kind of. This was sort of a flashback where he's sort of been kind of a playboy. He's got that playboy motif, and the girl is sort of like. She's kind of hanging out with him, and they're on a boat, and the boat's rocking back and forth, and then his father comes by and talks to Oliver that you shouldn't be cheating on your girlfriend with her sister, and he's kind of like, I'd. Cheating on her with her sister, and that things aren't going to go well with him and her. Then a man comes in and says, "We miss you, buddy." And this sort of, so the show kind of gives us flashbacks to give us sort of how Oliver develops. And we kind of see this man comes in and says, "We miss you, buddy." This guy is named Tommy Merlin, who his name's Colin Denial. He was in Chicago PD, Chicago MD, Chicago Fire, Unforgettable, and The Affair. Tommy is telling Oliver about everything that he missed on the island, and he's like saying, you missed, we got a black president. he talks about how like CD or MP3s have gone the way of the dodo, or CDs have gone the way of the dodo, and all that, kind of how life has kind of evolved since he's left us, how since he's been gone, since Oliver's been gone. um, and his Tommy says that they're, Tommy comes in and he kind of says, let's kind of go out, let's kind of get your sea legs back into society and kind of hang out and do some stuff, and then and just kind of cruise around the city. Oliver says he wished to kind of swing by the office of Queen Industries, and he's kind of something that he just needs to do. And then the maid trips and falls in front of Oliver. Oliver, he kind of catches the bowl in sort of a um, kind of a slick move, and the maid then apologizes to Oliver about the about kind of getting in his way, and Oliver says no problem in Russian, and this surprises Mara and Walter. That how did he how when did you learn Russian? And and then and then this is a surprise to Mara Melissa. Then it surprises. So then he's like, "I want you to learn Russian," and then Mara and Walter says, we have a surprise for you," and Oliver says, I didn't know you were sleeping with my mother, Walter." This Then Mora and Walter reveal to Oliver that they were married. So it's kind of interesting that Oliver kind of assumes that they've been sleeping together, and he finds out that they've been married for surprise that he's been married since he's been gone. So that's kind of a shock to Oliver. Oliver says it's fine and leaves the table. That night, Oliver we see he's kind of having trouble sleeping, and he has a flashback to where Oliver and Sarah Lance, who's played by Jacqueline Mangle Wood, who's from Final Destination and The Bold and the Beautiful and episodes of Castle. They've been drinking wine and are about to make out. And this is on the boat, where we see the boat starts to and they're about to make out, and the boat starts to flip over, and Sarah ends up getting sucked into the water and drowning. And there's this moment where he's like going, "Sarah, Sarah," and Sarah gets swooped in and ends up getting sucked into the water and drowning. And so basically, this scene is where we see this is how kind of the accident happened. That then Mara walks up to Oliver, and Oliver kind of attacks her because he's kind of still has PTSD um, in his sleep, and she says, "I'm sorry that." She says, it's okay, you're home." She's taking it. She's trying to take it. She's trying to be patient with him as he adjusts back to normality, and says okay, but but she's also glad that he's home. And then the next day, Oliver opens up a chest of his dad's stuff, and he finds a book. This book is very important. Then goes into his sister's room to talk to her about sort of, trying to catch up. And we see that she has been, she is cutting up cocaine, or prescription drugs. It doesn't really say, but she's doing something with drugs. And he says he bought a gift for her. She's kind of like, you didn't have to give me a gift, but he says it's a it's a Buddhist tradition, or it's Buddhist hosen, so they can reconnect. So it's more of a present to sort of reconnect with kind of their falling out from when he's been on the island. Then and he there's this kind of moment where I he sort of says, we I really missed you, and that uh, then Tommy Merlin comes to give Oliver a night on the town to kind of change his spirit. So um, so Tommy tells Oliver about so they're driving around, uh, and Tommy tells Oliver about the funeral they had for him because he was gone. They drive to Queen Industry Factory, where the which was one of uh, Oliver Queen's dad's businesses. Tommy asks him what does he miss most while he was on the island. So they have kind of a moment where they're talking to one another, and Oliver says he missed Laurel, who was the girl, who was a sweetheart. Laurel, his sweetheart, who's played by Cassidy. Um, so Oliver then meets Laurel's at her office where they end up catching up. And Oliver finds out that she went to, so kind of, I guess they knew each other in the, previously, before the show began. They knew each other through in school, and she ended up going to law school, and he wants to apologize that they did not apologize. He did not fall under her spell, and how Laurel was angry that, and she's kind of mad at him for the fact that her sister was on the Queen's Gambit with him, and the fact that she died, which I would be pissed too if I was her. Um, Oliver then meets. Okay, Laura was angry with her sister was dead, and that her sister screwed her, and and she was also pissed that the last thing that she said was that the fact that her sister screwed her boyfriend, and how they buried an empty coffin, and she says it should have been, and she's pissed, and she's really hurt because she says it should have been Oliver that she thought she would that and she thought he would rot in hell is a whole lot longer than 5 years, and she walks off. So she's having. So I like the fact that Laurel is having doesn't give Oliver an easy welcome because uh, of what Oliver did to her did to her sister. Uh, and Then Tommy and Oliver walk back to their car, and Tommy suggests sushi, and then we see a van pull up and two men in red masks, and they're pretty much like the red masks are sort of, they're kind of like, they're not like red ski masks, they're more like Halloween devil looking masks, and come in, and they end up shooting darts, and both Tommy and Oliver Oliver and Tommy both pass out, and they basically um, they end up getting kidnapped. And then we kind of go straight to flashbacks where Oliver is on a lifeboat with his dad, um, and his dad reveals to him that he did not rebuild the city, he fell this city, which is going to be a motif in later episodes. It failed it, and he was not the only one only one that did it. And then we go back to the present. Oliver is now Oliver is now in an abandoned building, and he's tied to a chair, and he's with the masked men. They ask him questions, and they tase him. The first tase him, like, to torture him, and they say the first masked man. Um, let's see. The first man says, "What are you going to do now, Mr. Queen?" Oliver says, "He's going to kill them both." And the skull masked man says, "But you're zip tied to a chair." Oliver says, "Not anymore," and starts using a chair like a wrestling move, which is awesome. And I like how that he knows, he's kind of does the Taken thing where he says, I have a formidable number of skills that I will use on you." And we kind of can see that, uh, uh, make sure and he does like a wrestling move to break the chair. He checks on Tommy, uh, to make sure he's alive, and then chases the kidnappers out of his hideout. He does some parkour where he does some leaps and jumps and does like runs across the rooftops, and he does a parkour and chases them, man, to a second storage room after grabbing the kidnappers, uh, in a back in a kind of a back lock. So he kind of grabs them from behind, and none of them really put him in a headlock, but puts him in a back lock, which is interesting. Um, uh, uh, Oliver says, "You killed the man, that man," and the kidnapper says, "You don't have to do this." Oliver says, "Yes, yes, I do." So he takes kind of the law into his own hands and snaps the kidnapper's neck, which is pretty gruesome for a CW show. Back at the Queen's estate, Oliver and Tommy are being interrogated by Quentin Lance about their kidnapping, and the green hooded figure. Tommy Green Hood, by the way, he wore a green hood to kind of this is sort of the Green Hood moment where his sort of first outing as the Green Arrow. Um, and Quentin Lance, and you're talking to Quentin Lance about the kidnapping and the green hooded figure. Tommy says he didn't see anything and doesn't know if it was blurry, and he was kind of out of it. And then Mara asks Quentin about if they could figure out if they could figure out, and Quentin says, "Funny how one day back and people are already gunning for you, Oliver." And Mora Queen asked about if they identified the kidnappers, and they had and they had scrambled the identity of the moduled voices, kind of trying to get to see who ended up abducting Oliver. Quentin comments about keeping your voice safe, and Oliver that he says, Quentin's like, you need to keep your voice safe and out of trouble, and and Mara does not like his tone. Quentin says, your luck never seems to run out, does it? Does it?" And you can kind of tell that Quentin is sort of feels like, I think he has, I wouldn't say a grudge. Well, yeah, a grudge, because the fact that his daughter died, he's still kind of going through that pain of that process. Um, and later on, Oliver is looking through, and then, and he's still going through the process. And then we kind of see later on, Oliver is looking through the journal of his father that left him, when he is interrupted by Ray, who comes to bring him some food. Rhea, and this is his kind of his maid, comes to bring him some food, and she's like, "No kitchen on the island." He asked her if he seems. She asked her. She asked him if he seems any different. She says he's still a good boy. He says, I wasn't, but she says you do have a good heart. So I like how she like there's sort of a maybe not an Alfred Bruce Wayne kind of thing, but there's sort of a relationship with Oliver and the maid that they've kind of known each other for a long time. Um, and she says, "I hope so. I want to be the boy you always thought I could be." Oliver walks out of the house, and Mora kind of says, "Before you leave, I want to introduce you to John Duggar as his bodyguard." So Oliver, and this is our first meeting of John Duggar, and he's the bodyguard. So Oliver and Diggle, are basically driving. Um, he's taking them around the city, and Oliver starts kind of asking. Uh, he says, "I'm here to keep you from harm." Or Oliver's like, "Keep you from harm," and just like Batman, he kind of abandons the car and heads over to Queen's Industries. But going back, I kind of feel like there's this kind of moment where you see that he's been he's an Iraq veteran, and he's been in the military, and this is his first time. This is John Duggar doing sort of uh, civilian security work, but um, and so he abandons the car. Oliver does, and heads over to Queen Industries industrial welding building. He does parkour over the fence, or jumps the fence basically, and he walks into the factory. And Oliver says in voiceover, "The abduction was unexpected. It forced him to move off his plan." He says, "The man in the green hood was there in the warehouse, and he's just the beginning." So now we're this is sort of the kind of beginning of him becoming the Green Arrow, and he begins a montage where we see him he he takes the old factory into the Green Arrow cave mode. He's setting up computers, he's making arrows, he's doing all the Batman Begins cave scene basically. Um, Cave mode. Yes, all the lights were up, computers, and he basically got sort of his whole Green Arrow arsenal. He does parkour where we kind of see him do the I think it's the ladder action where he takes the bar, it just kind of moves up the bar and kind of does, it's kind of like doing chin ups, but it's using a bar instead of doing chin ups. um, where he takes a metal pole and starts climbing up things. He then does some sit ups, and he kind of does a whole workout routine, and he finally opens a case that has a bow and arrow. He takes the quiver and his bows and arrows, and he starts sort of using target practice where he'll throw a ball. I think he does it with tennis balls. That's right. He throws a tennis ball and shoots an arrow at each of the tennis bars, and they stick to the walls. Um, is basically using it for targets practice. He's and he hits all the and what's so cool is that he hits all the tennis balls. So you can see that he's a good one. Take that, Katniss. Um, he's in hits all the tennis balls. Then Oliver is doing his Then he's going on his computer doing his research, going through the list of people in his dad's notebook, and that sort of in the notebook pretty much is sort of our MacGuffin of pretty much the series. Or at least from what I've seen in the first, I think in the first two seasons, he's pretty much using the uh, notebook, the little black book, as sort of um, his sort of his like mission for each episode. Um, and it's that notebook. And first one that starts out with is Adam Hunt. Adam Hunt, who's the first one we see. We then find out that he has been able to bully, bribe, and kill anyone. Kill anyone who that gets in his way. He says he hasn't met him yet, and this is our first sort of going. This is his moment where this is his first sort of like going out as the Green Arrow. And then we meet Adam Hunt, who's played by Brian Markinson, who you know from Mad Men, Godzilla, Shooter, and NCIS. He's walking, and this is Adam Hunt. He's walking with his bodyguard when an arrow knocks out the lights. When Oliver says, you missed, we're here off camera, grunts and arches as Adam Hurl's bodyguard is killed. Then the glass window breaks and the Green Arrow so he comes out into the glass, and the Green Arrow tells Adam Hunt to transfer $40 million into account by 10 p.m. or he's going to take it. And he says, you don't like how I'm going to do it. That morning at Adam Hunt's office, he tells Detective Lance. So he basically, after the ordeal, the next day he tells Detective Lance about how the man who stopped him wore a green hood and how he put two of his men in the hospital. Adam Hunt tells the detective that they can coordinate with Mr. Deacon, Darren Chevalier, who was in I Spy, IP Man, The Day the Earth Stood Still, his new head of security. Then Quentin Lance and Detective Lucas Hilton, who was in MacGyver, Batman, Death in the Family, War of the Planet of the Apes, that Oliver gets in his. So kind of he tells them that, I need, this man has been, harassing, basically, I need you to find this man. And, basically he's putting out a police the guys are getting a statement about the ordeal that happened that night. Let's see. Then Oliver gets in his car and Diggle is there, and they head to the party. Oliver is walking down he's walking down the stairs at his own party, and this party is pretty much for his sort of return party. He checks his phone, and at the time is 9:07. Tommy tells the crowd, "He's the man of the hour." Oliver walks up to the table and takes a shot of tequila. The music starts playing. Across the street, we see Mr. Deacon and Adam Hunt with their man getting ready to do a heist. He looks out the window. This is Deacon and Adam Hunt, or one of them looks out the window and asks, "What's going on out there?" Men there, and they tell him that there's a party for Oliver Queen. the guy who got rescued, Oliver and Tommy, and then we go back to the party, and Oliver and Tommy are talking by the bar and saying that you have not had a fling with a girl since you were on the island. He recommends a girl's name, Cameron Golden, who Tommy says looks like the chick from Twilight. So there's a couple references from that, which Oliver has no idea what it is. How shocking, because he's been on an island. He goes up to his sister and tells her that he's like, "What are you doing here? You're 17. You don't need to be. You need to get out of here. And this is no place for this party is not a place for her." Thea says, "You can't come back," and she's kind of pissed because it's kind of like, so basically, my brother shows up back from the dead and now is telling me that I can't party, and you can tell through kind of what you can tell by her actions that she's feeling sort of like lost, um, kind of lost and feeling hurt because of what her brother did to leave her. After she says, "You can't judge me," Thea says, "Look, you died. I thought you were dead. Being like you." Then she says to Oliver that he died, that she went to the funeral, and how her mom had support with Walter. They had no one. Thea says it's kind of permanently in there, and so she's dealing with a lot of stress from the fact that her brother came back from the dead, and she says, "Look, I'm kind of," and so she's doing her best she can to do with what she has to work with. So she's dealing with kind of the whole shock, and how she's also a teenager, and she's in a pretty. You kind of notice that Thea at the beginning of this show is dealing with so much pressure from Oliver being back. Thea goes off with her friends. One of her friends asks if she still has the drugs. Thea says, "Oh no, I must have dropped it." So she's going with her friends to leave, and she says, "Oh, I must have dropped it." Then Oliver runs into Laurel and then dropped it. Oliver picks it up, and then Oliver runs into Laurel. He's surprised that she's there. Laurel says Tommy told her not to leave things off where they left their relationship. And they leave the party to talk. Casually, Laura apologizes to Oliver about what she said. Her sister, she's dealing and about her, and she said about her sister. And I think you look at both women of, Thea and Laurel, and I think Thea and Laurel are in this first episode are trying to cope with both Oliver being back for Thea and the fact that Laurel's sister is no longer with them. To apologize about what she said about her sister. Oliver says, if I could trade places with her, I would. Then Laura asks Oliver, when Sarah died, did she suffer? And it's this really good moment. We get a good moment where he's kind of, consults her and says, and then we get a flashback of Sarah getting. It's kind of a really kind of tragic scene where Sarah's holding on to something on the ship, and Sarah gets sucked through the water out of the ship. Both Oliver and Laurel think about her. Both Oliver and Laurel, they do think about her every day. Laurel says to Oliver that that she's there for that that they're both there for each other, for a shoulder to cry on. Then Oliver's phone beeps. It's 10 p.m. Uh, and he checks to see if the funds were transferred. Then the Adams Hunt stuff. They were not. Oliver then tells Laura to stay away from him. And it's sort of like, stay away from me. I have him. He kind of wants to be in secret and says, I have to go. Instead of saying, like, I have to go, he just says, just stay away from me. And from him, that the island made him a better person. It did not. That you asked me if he says, look, you think the island made me a better person. He says it did not. And that he's going to hurt Laura emotionally again. He tells her he has a party to get to, and then Laura tells that the island did change him now that he's honest, and she walks off. So you can tell that they're having a problem. They're trying to rebuild their relationship through this first episode. Walk off. Wait, the party, he's honest, and she walks off. Then Oliver is walking to the underground level to go to the crime scene, and Diggle stops him and tells him, "Sir, the party is this way." He goes to the ballroom's door and says it's locked and knocks out Diggle. So you can tell that Oliver can kind of handle himself. It knocks out. Meanwhile, we see Adam Hunt and his men saying, "It's past 10 p.m. He's never going to get here." And then we see an arrow hit the wall. So he shoots an arrow, and then Quentin is told that all the Quentin Lance is informed that all is clear, and that the police are fully there. We're into Oliver's first mission, and Green Arrow. As Green Arrow, there are guards waiting for him near the elevator, and it's a pretty cool. And the elevator comes up, and the doors are open, and Oliver, as the Green Arrow, takes the thugs down one at a time, and he gets in, and we see him get into Hunt's office, and fights off the bodyguards. Hunt informs Officer Lance that there's the intruder, or as we're going to know him from now on, the Hood. Hood enters the building, and He gets the men to go to the building. Arrows take out one of Darkland's men, even though he has a machine gun, hitting Oliver. Meanwhile, Lance's SWAT team is entering the building. Oliver, who gets a little winded, wakes up, grunts, and hears the SWAT team tells him to lay down the weapons or they will fire. Then Arrow makes a run for it out of the window, which is a pretty cool scene. Out of the window, and uses his bow as a zip line to the building across the street where his homecoming party is going on. Quentin and the SWAT team come in and tell them that the party is over. Quentin and the SWAT team come in to the party and tells them the party's over, and talks to Tommy Merlin. And we can tell that Quentin has some trouble with Tommy before. I can see that they had some trouble before this episode began. That Tommy is still sort of the fast cars party boy that sort of hung around with Oliver. He asked him if he, and then because he asks Quentin asks Tommy if he roofied anyone special, which I kind of think is interesting that, he's also sort of kind of, it looks like Tommy has sort of the bad reputation as being sort of a quote unquote bad boy with Oliver. Oliver shows up to when Quentin and Tommy are there, and basically he says, detectives, this is a private party, and Quentin tells Oliver that Adam Hunt's building, and Oliver says he doesn't know who that is. Oliver is playing the suave playboy persona, and Quentin tells Oliver that the hood guy attacked him, the same guy who saved him earlier, which was the Green Arrow, Oliver. So then so Oliver kind of comes up, and he's like, kind of as sort of the playboy persona, he goes up to the front stage and announces that offers a reward for $2 million to the crowd, to anyone that finds the green hood, and the crowd cheers. Then Quentin asks Oliver if he ever tried to save his daughter on the ship. So we can tell that Quentin, I think probably in the first couple episodes, basically is still struggling with his, with the loss of his daughter. So then, then his partner tells him that it's time to go. That Tommy gives Oliver a look. Oliver goes to center stage and says, "Let's get this party started," and the music starts to play. Then Tommy talks to Oliver about the consents that he had at the party next to Hunt's, the coincidence that he had at the party next to Hunt's office, where Hunt was robbed next door and done by the same guy who rescued them at the warehouse. So Tommy's trying to put, two and two together. There is something going on with Oliver, and he's kind of questioning what's going on with Oliver. And Oliver says, "If I were you, Tommy, I would just be happy that you're alive." And he asks Oliver, "What happened to you on that island?" And Oliver says, "A lot," and walks off. The next day at Adam Hunt's office, they're repairing the window that was broken the night before, and Hunt is on his cell phone wondering where $40 million has gone, because it's no longer in his bank account and it's untraceable. And we find out that the arrow that he shoots in the office was used as a microphone speaker to bug the office. We didn't see Oliver looking. We didn't see Oliver looking at a computer. We didn't see Oliver looking at a computer, watching the $40 million go into the different accounts, and he crosses the name of Adam Hunt out of his father's book. And I like how we see sort of he's got sort of I like how it's more of a bat, kind of the way the bat computer works, but it's sort of in its early stages. And I think throughout the series it gets a little bit more high tech. But it's kind of cool to see it in its infancy right now. So Oliver is going through the book, through the journal, and this leads him to a flashback where we see the survivors of the Queen's Gambit: Oliver, his father, and another guy. Robert tells Oliver that there's not enough for all of us to survive. He tells Oliver to make it home, kid, son, and make the sins of the father right. Then Robert takes out a gun and shoots one of the passengers with him that we don't really know. and then puts the gun onto his temple and tells his son to survive, and inserts of shooting himself back at the present office on the phone. Wait. Back at the present, Oliver is waking from a dream and waking from the dream and looking at his computer. Then we see at the law firm, Laura that Laura works at, is at the office on the phone talking about the hypothetical question about how did $50,000 appear in someone's bank account. That just happens that if that happens, and she should tell anybody. Should I tell anybody? And they're getting phone calls from their clients against Adam Hunt. Then her office friend has a phone call about the exact same thing. Later that night, Tommy and Laurel, and they kind of have a moment together. Then later that night, they're walking out from dinner, and they're walking to their car talking about the party from the previous night. And Tommy, he says he saw Laurel and Oliver head out, and Laurel is like, Oliver and her, there's nothing romantic between them, and that Tommy and Laura are more of a lap because they go back and forth in their different places. More of their relationship is sort of still of Tommy and Laura's relationship is more a little wonky, and because their relationship, they're not really living together, but they're sort of, one staying over at the other's house and the other staying at the other's house. So they're not really, pretty much they're not strictly into in a relationship. They're strictly not, they're kind of platonic, in a platonic relationship. Then we get a flashback where Oliver is in a boat and how he got on the island. Then a man is at the Queen's estate talking about the failed attempt to kidnap Oliver, and a woman says there are other ways of finding out with my son what my son knows, and it's Maura Queen. She knows about the abduction. End of episode. So that was the first episode of Green Lantern of Arrow, sorry, and I liked it. I'm kind of hooked. When I saw it the first time, I wasn't exactly, chomping at the bit to see the first one like Smallville, but I looked at it. I think, watching it, I got through like 4 seasons of it, and the pilot episode, I think, it was a pretty strong pilot episode for what it is. I think Stephen Amelia plays an amazing Arrow, and there's more depth for someone who I've kind of only known Arrow through Smallville. I thought he did a great job. I liked how he was suave and kind of in that Bruce Wayne kind of feel. And I like the cast. I think the cast does pretty well. And I think Laurel and Oliver sort of have really great chemistry. I like the relationship between the brother and sister. And I thought it was a great episode. So I'll give it a 9. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. So that was my look at Arrow. If there's any other DC things you want to see, please comment below. Anyway, have a good day. And next episode, I'll be back with Jay with John Wick Chapter 4, and then I'll be focusing on Disney's Hercules. So thank you guys for watching, and as always, like and subscribe, and tell me what you want me to review. Peace. Bye.